The DNA results are back.
No, it can't be true!
Michael, you are not her father.
Michael, please!
This can't be happening.
Mom, Dad?
The doctor suddenly stopped speaking. Michael Carter felt his stomach tighten the moment he saw his wife Sarah begin to cry. The hospital room went completely silent. 12-year-old Emma sat innocently on the examination bed, swinging her legs, while the doctor slowly removed his glasses and stared down at the DNA results in disbelief. Then, he finally spoke. "Mr. Carter, according to these results, you are not Emma's biological father." Michael stopped breathing. Sarah covered her mouth as tears rolled down her cheeks. And in that moment, 12 years of love, sacrifice, trust, and family began collapsing all at once. But the DNA results were only the beginning, because Michael was about to discover something even more horrifying. Before we dive into the story, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you discovered your entire family was built on a lie? 12 years earlier, Michael believed he had the perfect life. He met Sarah during college when both of them were struggling to survive on cheap instant noodles and part-time jobs. She was beautiful, soft-spoken, and had a smile that made every bad day feel lighter. Michael fell in love with her almost immediately. 3 years later, they got married in a small church surrounded by family and close friends. Michael still remembered how Sarah cried while reading her wedding vows. Back then, he truly believed she loved him as deeply as he loved her. When Emma was born 2 years later, Michael felt his life finally had meaning. He worked endlessly to provide for them. Double shifts. Weekend jobs. Late-night electrical repairs. There were nights he returned home exhausted with cuts on his hands and barely enough energy to eat dinner. But the moment Emma ran into his arms yelling "Daddy," every sacrifice felt worth it. He never missed her birthdays, never missed her school performances, never forgot bedtime stories. Even when money became tight, Michael always found a way to make Emma smile. Because unlike his own father, Michael refused to abandon his family. But lately something had changed. Sarah had become distant, cold. Her laughter disappeared. Late-night phone calls suddenly stopped whenever Michael entered the room. And every time he asked if something was wrong, she always gave the same answer. "You're imagining things." At first, Michael believed her. Marriage had difficult seasons. At least that's what he told himself. But deep down, something felt wrong. Then one evening during dinner, Emma unknowingly said something that shattered the peace inside him. "Mom says I got my eyes from Uncle Daniel." Michael looked up slowly. Sarah nearly dropped her fork. The tension at the table became immediate. "Uncle Daniel?" Michael repeated carefully. Emma nodded innocently. "Mom says we smile the same too." Sarah forced a nervous laugh. "She's just being silly," but Michael noticed how pale Sarah suddenly looked, and for the first time in years an ugly thought entered his mind. Daniel was Michael's older brother. He visited their house often. Too often. The thought disgusted Michael instantly, and he pushed it away. But that night, Michael couldn't stop thinking about it, and what he discovered days later would completely destroy him. 3 nights later, Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch while watching television. Her phone rested beside her. Then suddenly it vibrated. Michael glanced down without thinking. One message appeared on the screen. From Daniel. "We can't keep hiding this forever." Michael froze. A second message immediately followed. What if Michael finds out the truth? Michael felt ice run through his veins. He slowly picked up the phone with trembling hands. Before he could unlock it, Sarah suddenly woke up and snatched it away violently. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then, Michael finally asked quietly, "What truth is Daniel talking about?" Sarah's face turned white. "You were reading my messages? What truth is he talking about? You're acting paranoid." Michael stared at her. "You didn't answer the question." Sarah stood up immediately. "I'm tired of your accusations." She stormed upstairs, leaving Michael sitting alone in silence. But he couldn't sleep that night, because deep down, he already knew something terrible was hiding beneath the surface of his marriage. Over the next several weeks, Michael started noticing things he had ignored for years. Emma looked nothing like him. Her smile, her eyes, even the way she tilted her head while laughing. The resemblance to Daniel suddenly became impossible to unsee. And once the suspicion entered his mind, it poisoned everything. Michael stopped sleeping properly. At work, he became distracted and irritable. Every memory inside their family home suddenly felt fake. Then things became even worse. One afternoon, Michael returned home early after a storm shut down the construction site he was working on. The house was unusually quiet. As he walked toward the kitchen, he heard voices coming from the living room. Sarah was crying. "I can't keep lying to him anymore," she whispered. Daniel answered softly, "If he finds out, everything will fall apart." Michael's entire body went numb. He stepped into the room. Sarah gasped in shock. Daniel stood up immediately. The guilt on both their faces was unmistakable. Michael looked directly at his brother. "What's going on?" Neither of them answered. Michael's voice grew louder. "What are you hiding from me?" Sarah burst into tears. Daniel looked away, and suddenly Michael realized something horrifying. This wasn't fear. This was guilt. Years of guilt. But Michael still hadn't discovered the worst part of the betrayal. That night, Michael sat alone inside his garage, staring into darkness for nearly 4 hours. Rain pounded against the roof while his thoughts spiraled endlessly. Every family barbecue, every Christmas dinner, every birthday party, Daniel had stood beside him smiling while hiding a devastating secret. Then finally, around 2 in the morning, Michael made a decision. The next day, he secretly ordered a D.N.A. test. The week waiting for the results became torture. Michael could barely look at Emma without feeling his heart break. Because despite everything, he loved her completely. Part of him desperately prayed the test would prove he was wrong. That all of this was simply paranoia destroying his mind. But Sarah's behavior only made things worse. She avoided eye contact constantly. She barely touched him anymore. Daniel stopped visiting entirely. And every day, Michael felt his entire world collapsing around him piece by piece. Then, finally, the hospital called. The results were ready. Michael drove there alone through heavy rain with his hands shaking on the steering wheel the entire way. But when he arrived, Sarah was already standing outside the hospital entrance waiting for him. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Michael stared at her silently. "How did you know about the test?" Sarah said nothing. That silence confirmed everything. The elevator ride upstairs felt endless. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them even looked at each other. Inside the examination room, the doctor entered holding a thin white envelope. Michael's heartbeat pounded violently inside his chest. The doctor opened the file slowly, then finally said the words that destroyed 12 years of Michael's life. "Mr. Carter, you are not the biological father." Sarah immediately collapsed into tears. Michael felt the room spinning around him. But then the doctor continued speaking. "There's something else you should know." Michael looked up slowly. The biological match suggests a close family relation. For several seconds, Michael couldn't process the words. Then suddenly his eyes shifted towards Sarah, and in that horrifying moment, he already knew. Michael's voice barely worked. It was Daniel, wasn't it? Sarah broke down completely. Michael felt something inside him shatter. His own brother. His own wife. 12 years. 12 years of lies. 12 years of humiliation. "You let me raise another man's child," Michael whispered. Sarah cried uncontrollably. "It only happened once," Michael exploded. "Once?" His voice echoed across the hospital walls. "You watched me work myself to exhaustion for this family. You watched me love her. You watched me call her my daughter every single day." Sarah collapsed into a chair, sobbing hysterically. "I was scared." Michael laughed bitterly through tears. "Scared? You destroyed my life." Then Sarah whispered something that made everything even worse. "Daniel wanted to tell you years ago." Michael froze completely. "What?" "He tried several times, but I stopped him." Michael stared at her in disbelief. Every memory suddenly became poisoned. Every handshake with Daniel. Every laugh. Every holiday. His own brother had betrayed him while pretending to love him. But Sarah still hadn't revealed the darkest secret of all. Michael stared at her with tears in his eyes. "How long?" Sarah looked down at the floor. Almost the entire marriage. Michael felt physically sick. The affair had never truly ended. His knees nearly gave out beneath him. For 12 years they had looked him in the eyes and lied to him every single day. Michael suddenly couldn't breathe. He stormed out of the hospital into the freezing rain without even realizing where he was going. Cars blurred past him. His hands shook so violently he dropped his car keys twice. And for the first time in his life, Michael completely broke down. Over the next several weeks, everything collapsed. Michael filed for divorce immediately. But the real explosion happened during his mother's birthday dinner. Nearly the entire family was there. Brothers, sisters, cousins, family friends. Nobody knew the truth yet. Dinner continued normally until Michael suddenly stood up, holding several papers in his hand. The room grew quiet. Sarah's face immediately turned pale. Daniel stopped eating. Michael looked around the table slowly, then finally spoke. "For 12 years, I believed I had a loyal wife and a trustworthy brother. Nobody moved." Michael placed the DNA results directly onto the dinner table. "They've both been lying to me." Gasps filled the room. Michael's mother grabbed the papers with trembling hands. As she read the results, her face collapsed in horror. Then Michael said the words nobody expected. "Emma is Daniel's daughter." The room erupted instantly. One cousin stood up in shock. An aunt burst into tears. Sarah started crying uncontrollably. But the worst moment came seconds later. Michael's mother slowly turned toward Daniel, then slapped him across the face so hard the entire room froze. "You betrayed your own brother?" she screamed. Daniel couldn't even speak. Sarah tried explaining herself through tears, but nobody wanted to hear it anymore. For the next 20 minutes, the entire family tore them apart emotionally. Years of trust vanished in seconds. But karma wasn't finished yet. Over the next several months, Daniel lost almost everything. His girlfriend left him after discovering the truth online. Several family members cut contact with him completely. He became isolated, humiliated, destroyed. Sarah's life collapsed too. The divorce court exposed her affair publicly. Michael kept the house, most of the savings, and eventually Sarah moved into a tiny apartment alone. But despite everything, Michael still protected Emma from the truth as much as possible. Because none of this was her fault. Not one part of it. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Sarah moved away. Daniel became isolated from almost everyone in the family. But the hardest moment came when Emma visited Michael one final time before leaving town with her mother. They sat quietly together on the old porch swing where they used to watch sunsets every summer. Emma looked down at her hands nervously, then finally asked the question Michael feared most. "Are you still my dad?" Michael instantly broke down crying. He pulled her tightly into his arms. "Nothing will ever change that." Emma cried against his chest while Michael held her tightly as if letting go would destroy both of them forever. And in that moment, Michael realized something powerful. Blood may create biology, but love creates family. Years later, Michael rebuilt his life slowly. He eventually found peace, bought a new home, started his own successful electrical company, and for the first time in years, he smiled again. Meanwhile, Daniel became the man nobody in the family trusted anymore. The betrayal destroyed him permanently. Because some actions never stop haunting people, especially when they destroy the people who loved you most. If this story shocked you, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications for more emotional family betrayal stories. And tell me honestly in the comments, could you ever forgive a betrayal like this?